Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Malnutrition is something of a problem that most people consider affects those people in the country who are poor and impoverished. But micronutrient malnutrition is turning out to be a serious public health problem. In fact, previously, fortified food has been used as a strategy to counter deficiencies, and this has proved to be successful in the case of iodized salt, which helped reduce the incidence of goiter. So the big question here is, can fortified food and edible oils which are fortified help solve this problem of micronutrient malnutrition? And is the industry ready with innovative products so that food products can be fortified affordably and be taken to the masses? To discuss this, I have an eminent panel with me. I am joined by Mr. Sriraj Chaudhary. He is chairman at Cargill, India. We have with us Mr. Mayank Jalan, co-chairman, CII National Committee on Food Processing and managing director at Keventer Agro. We're also joined by Ms. Sudha Pillai. She's former member secretary of the Planning Commission of India. And we have Mr. Rajan Shankar, country manager and senior advisor, South Asia GAIN. And last not least, but we've got Dr. Amrish Mittal, MD, chairman and HOD, Division of Endocrinology and Diabetes in Medanta, Medicity. Thank you, gentlemen and ladies, for joining us on this discussion. Now, let me start with you, Mr. Chaudhary. Cargill has been in the food processing business, and you have had success with fortified foods. What would you think? Do you think that this is a good strategy to, counter the problem of micronutrient malnutrition in the country?
Yes, I wouldn't claim that what one organization does can solve the problem of malnutrition in the country, but the opportunity is there for a lot of people to do a lot of things to solve that problem. So malnutrition can be addressed or should be addressed with a number of things. So it starts with sanitation, cleanliness, and goes on to fortification of food. I mean, there has to be a good diet and then fortification of food for those who can't afford a good diet or who are not able to get to a good, cannot access a good diet. We as an organization are a large manufacturer and distributor of vegetable oils. We learned and proceeded with that knowledge that vegetable oils is one of the best carriers of vitamins, actually. We also know that vegetable oils, because it's a product which is consumed just across every household, actually has close to 99% penetration, which means that 99% of the households actually consume vegetable oil. So you have a vehicle, you have a medium. What was needed was to get the insights and the technology to fortify vegetable oils and carry it to the consumers. But we alone can't solve the problem. We fully recognize that.
Right. Mr. Shankar, wanted to understand from you, how problematic is this public health issue of micronutrient malnutrition? Because many people think that they have a good diet, so why should they have to suffer from this? Is this a problem affecting only the masses? How widespread is this problem in India?
Malnutrition has been really haunting us. And we have very high rates of malnutrition. Combined with a huge population base, we have this dubious distinction of having the country with the largest number of stunted, wasted, malnourished children. And it's also true in the past few decades, the progress that we have made is very modest, to say the least, and much slower than what many countries with similar socioeconomic background have been able to achieve. Now, malnutrition has multiple facets, and one of the important things is the deficiency of key vitamins and minerals. That is what we call as micronutrient malnutrition. Many of these vitamins and minerals cannot be made in the body, so they have to be part of the diet that we eat. As our diet gets narrower and narrower, people are eating very few food groups, the micronutrient malnutrition is becoming so widely prevalent, and it is contributing hugely to the global burden of disease, unlike what we thought, that micronutrients are a kind of a icing in the cake. You eat well, and then you can take vitamins. That's not true. It's a very serious public health problem. It stunts children. It stunts not them physically, but their mental growth. So the first point to realize is that it's a serious public health problem and a very serious problem in India too.
Right. Ms. Sudha Pillai, I want to get you in this discussion. The government has its own plans and programs. You've been involved in the government to try and tackle this problem of malnutrition. Why aren't we making progress quickly enough?
Malnutrition is now such an acute issue. It's actually come to our doorstep. It's not something that, you think is in some faraway hamlet in the hills. It's actually prevalent in the cities. It's prevalent among people who meet you every day, and you find that a very large percentage of the population actually is in peril for not realizing its physical and mental potential. So I've been in the government, but within the government also there is a lot of debate about initiatives and about the steps that are taken. And by and large, I found that the steps that we were taking were emergency steps. That you actually, looking at protein calorie malnutrition, you identify some children who are very visibly malnourished, and then you hospitalize them for a few weeks, and you put them back in the same system. Actually, there are several factors. And our initiatives, our interventions have not actually gone to the root of the causes.
Mr. Jalan, I want to understand, the government is making efforts. Panelists have said that our diets are narrow. What has changed? Why are we in this situation? Can the food processing industry help here?
If you look at the way that the economy, the world, the country, all of us are moving, we no longer give food and meals the same importance which we used to. So that ultimately leads, at our sector, or the SECA, SECB segment, also suffering from micronutrient deficiencies, because we don't have the time to have the right food. We want to have food which is, fun, but may not be as healthy. We probably focus on fads in our diet. So there'll be a year where there'll be a no-carb diet. There'll be a year which will be a high saturated fat diet. So all of these things are leading on to a position or to a situation where all of us are suffering from this deficiency, including myself. Then what corrective measures that we take is we go to a doctor, and the doctor will say that you have vitamin A, vitamin D deficiency, take these supplements. We can access that healthcare. We can access the supplements, which are extremely expensive, but that is not possible for the entire pyramid to access.
Dr. Mittal, the next question is to you. How do you think this should be tackled? Is this such an emergency that you need medicines, you need tablets, you need supplements, or is this something that we make a way of our life? And how acute is this problem?
I think you'll have to distinguish two things. Firstly, it's prevention versus treatment. And we're talking of prevention. That's where we are at. We're not going to treat these conditions by giving fortified food or fortified oil or milk or whatever. So when we talk of programs like fortification, we are talking actually of small amounts of the nutrient reaching everybody, or most people, or as many people as we can. Coming back to what Ms. Pillai was saying, actually, we're talking about overnutrition in a way, coupled with malnutrition. It's there, ma'am. It's upon us. Every day, the kind of, I've been a professor in a teaching college, and now I've been working in the corporate sector. So we've seen all kinds of profiles of patients. And what we see these days is not unusual at all to see someone who's actually obese, overweight, in some sense, way beyond the body mass index he or she should be, yet seriously deficient in vitamin D, seriously deficient in B12, and so many other things. Broadly, we know that Indian diets are an issue overall, because centuries of starvation have made us carbohydrate-dependent diets, basically. And overall, our proteins are low. So I'm not just sort of going over the macro part. So that problem that you're mentioning about protein calorie malnutrition is severe and has to be tackled. I mean, that is an emergency.
I'm trying to understand, Mr. Jalan, why is this awareness important?
Well, it's extremely important that, and I think it's extremely important not just for the private players, but the government to take a role in actually publicizing and making the awareness amongst the consumers, because there's a lot of misunderstanding or there's a lot of misinformation which floats around in our country. Over the years and decades, I think the consumer and the corporate have built in a layer of mistrust, a layer where they say that, no, whatever these corporates claim are not correct. So the kind of communication going in from a doctor, from the government, will actually make people believe that, look, there is a vitamin D deficiency in our country. And the way to resolve it is you buy vitamin D enriched edible oil.
All right. So, Ms. Pillai, so how will this go ahead? How will this partnership work out that, more fortified food is available through all these channels?
How does the government actually step in? Now, what has actually happened in our country is the whole program is fractured. But we've had successes. Let's just go back to the history of salt. Why is iodized salt now universal? In between, there was again a backlash. There was again some cottage industry, this, that, and the other. So let's look at what happened to salt and why is iodized salt part of the government's strategy to combat not only the goiter but also the mental retardation that can come in a small infant. Now here, I think there's a little bit of more debate required on the kind of oils that Indians consume. Vanaspati is certainly not a good oil to consume. So if you fortify Vanaspati as they were fortifying with A&D, I remember those Rath and Dalda tins. But the fact remains that we have to look at the consumption pattern of our people, because different kinds of oils are consumed in different parts of the country, and those oils have to be fortified across the board. Whether it comes as a part of your competitive differentiation or whether government really takes it upon itself to adopt it, perceiving oil as a good carrier of micronutrients. So these are things which actually will come provided we also understand one more point, which is that like the oil industries are unorganized, we also have labor which is unorganized. And they typically buy oil in those small cartons. I remember those Dhara Tetra packs being bought by people at the end of the day before they go to sit under some flyover and then cook their food.
Yes.
So how do you do that?
Yeah.
These are challenges.
So the question then, Mr. Shankar, is that when it comes to food processing in our country, it's very unorganized. So how do we introduce fortification of foods, be it edible oil or be it atta or some of those items? And when the government also goes out to engage with these private contractors, it's so unorganized. How will we get there when it comes to fortification?
It's also organized to a good extent. If you take that edible oil industry, it has fairly good industrial consolidation. And refined oil penetration, as mentioned by Siraj, is very high, and it's also increasing. I think the share of oil coming from organized sector is really increasing, and I think it's the right time to enter and over a period. Wheat, another staple, it's not so disorganized. It's smaller, the holding of, say, big wheat millers. They operate in local area. GAIN currently has 2 programs in Madhya Pradesh and in Rajasthan, where all the atta that comes from organized sector that is sold in urban, peri-urban areas, they're all fortified and they go through the market channel. This put pressure on the government in Rajasthan to really fortify the wheat flour that they sell through the public distribution system. And they did this for about 1.5 years. And then when the National Food Security Act came, they have temporarily, hopefully, suspended it because the beneficiary base has increased. There are several states where industry has started voluntarily fortifying. It's difficult with very small chakis, but there is enough industrial consolidation to capture a lot of staple food. And the food products like biscuits, bread, bun. So many of the wheat products can be fortified to make a big difference to people.
I would like to thank the panelists for this discussion that we've had on fortification and how fortification of edible oils will help reduce the micronutrient malnutrition that we're seeing in the country. Let's hope this creates greater awareness amongst all the audience and people make an effort to go out and have fortified food and take the decision of their health in their own hands and put prevention before any cure that they look out for. Thank you.